Hi, I'm Tim Wakefield, CEO and founder of Dead Calm Seas Marine Services. We're a marine construction company that specializes in commercial diving, so underwater welding, construction, salvage, demolition, and underwater archaeology. I would say when got our first big contract, we had that relationship, and I was like, boom, we have this couple $1 million project, the first of its kind for us. And we said, let's go after it. And I said, hey, Scott, I need to fund this. What can we do? How are we going to do this? I just have constantly have these ambitions of like I need to aim higher and do more, and like we're doing it for the greater good, right? I'm trying to change my industry for the better, but with that comes some pretty lofty ambitions. So it was just one night I was like, well, what happens when we get these big contracts? How do I cash flow that? I don't have the cash to do that. How am I going to fund this? Is there is I'm already having problems getting a traditional loan, so how am I going to get this big project? And then so it led me to like, okay, is there's anything like contract financing, mobilization funding? And I ended up typing in that keyword, and lo and behold, Scott popped up, Scott and Joe. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna call these people tomorrow. And I ended up calling Scott, and we had a good I think we had a couple-hour conversation that first time, and I mean, you guys were definitely in a much smaller capacity yourself, and you're like, "Yeah, absolutely, we'd be willing to help you out," and we kinda had a lot of similar ideology, and so it was nice. Now, I didn't end up needing it for, like, a year or so, but when I did need it, it was no questions asked. That relationship was already there. That's why, these relationships are so important to think about these things ahead of time. You should always be thinking down the road, because if you don't need it now, you might need it sometime, and it might be something you need it in a hurry. So if you have these relationships and already start going down that road, it helps out a lot. It changed it exponentially because we went from not, being able to win those contracts to being able to execute those contracts. Like we have all the people, but we didn't have the funds to execute it. And again, it was pivotal to have that in place. Now that we're winning more and more work and doing more work, we've hired a bunch of people. This year's been a huge growth year from us. I mean, we catapulted from 7 million to 30 million. That's an unheard of amount of growth, honestly, in our type of industry. And now we're bringing these people in where I was out overcapacitated with being able to go after projects because I didn't have the staff, but now we have the ability, and now we have senior level guys that wanted to jump on board. So yes, having that and then telling those guys, hey, I'm not afraid to go after the $30 million contract or the $50 million contract because I know we'll have something in place to be able to facilitate those.